everybody in life hits a brick wall. And the only way to have growth is to break through these brick walls, these obstacles that sometimes they're put there for us from external forces. Sometimes they're internal forces and they're self-imposed that we put on ourselves. But the only way to break through them is becoming conscious about them. Hey everybody, it's Johnny Mo. How are you? And I'm here with a good friend of mine, Mary Sawyer. Mary, how are you?
I'm doing good, doing well actually.
Excellent. And this is our first episode of a project that you and I have talked about doing for a while, which we feel is greatly needed out there. And we're simply calling it Brick Walls and Breakthroughs because everybody in life hits a brick wall. And the only way to have growth is to break through these brick walls, these obstacles that sometimes they're put there for us from external forces. Sometimes they're internal forces and they're self-imposed that we put on ourselves. But the only way to break through them is becoming conscious about them.
Yep.
And what we're going to talk about today, and I know we could talk a week about it, is masking misery.
Yes, we can talk a long time. We can write a book about that actually.
We surely can. And I think so many people are just programmed to
Yes.
be in the system, programmed for weekends off. It's I learned a new word a few weeks ago. It's called inculcated, where continually, I mean, indoctrinated is basically the same thing, but we've been inculcated through school, through our societal bring-ups and raisings and things like that, the media, other people's beliefs and things like that. And oftentimes, would you agree that we just get into this overdrive
Oh yeah, and
of
I think
ignorance?
we get lost in that. And
Mm,
funny, that was the first thing that popped in my head this morning. I'm not sure what I was reading. I think it was a conversation we had on Messenger this morning. It's what really got me thinking. But
mhm.
yeah, we are programmed to stay miserable. Like finding happiness is almost like it's a sin. You're not supposed to be happy. And you're supposed to stay, I guess I hate that word cheap. I
Mhm.
just I can't stand that word. But we're supposed to follow a system. Kind
Yeah,
of like, oh, that video you sent me this morning, just march along
right.
right into that camp.
I often say that we are free range humans on a tax farm. And, I don't want to get political in this whole thing
A different discussion.
because both sides and the middle and the upper and the lower, everybody is just taking. Right. But they want you, I think, in a way, and I don't even know who they are. Okay. I have my understanding of who they are, but there's multiple factions of they. They could be a family member, could be father, mother, brother, sister, uncle, whatever. They could be institutions. They could be the government, local government, town government, city government, whatever. They is everybody else. Okay. Everybody but me.
Yeah.
Um, they want you distracted. They want you ignorant. They want you focused on, oh, I get 2 weeks vacation. Oh, Big Brother's on. Who's gonna, or the one with the rose, the Bachelor, who's gonna get the rose? They don't want you to truly be happy. They want you to be complacent. And
Yes.
it's not until we peel back the mask of our own reality that we can start to dig deep into what it is that is either holding us back or makes us happy. I know
But
you into it.
yeah, but the thing that before that mask can even be peeled or recognized, before we even recognize that there's a mask there,
Mm.
there's we seem to have to go we have to go through some sort of tragedy or trauma or something. Something's got to break you before you even get to that point to where you recognize it. Because if you look at the people, just look at our our parents. They they followed, really. That's all they did. They worked 9 to 5 jobs, and that was okay to them. And that's how we were taught. We were taught to work 9 to 5, get that retirement or the gold watch or whatever that may be, and that's that's how it should be. That's how life should be.
And don't question, just do.
Exactly. Don't question. And when you question, now you become a rebel child.
Mhm.
You become a unruly child.
Comply, citizen.
Yeah, and you know, then here comes the cops. You're
Right?
not. You're a kid that's out of control, and instead
Yeah.
of you're a kid that's trying to find your own space in life.
Yeah.
And it took me having my own teenagers to see that, and then even then, I'm still in that process of really letting my children be their own people.
Yep.
Because,
And I just want to say for the record, just so everybody knows, you touched on something. I just want to expand upon this. You said some sort of trauma or some sort of misfortune or whatnot. Now, just like when you're at the doctor and they have those faces from 0 to 10, how bad does it hurt? Does it
mhm,
hurt a little bit or does it hurt severely? Same thing. It could be something major traumatic that happened in your youth. It could be a relationship type of thing. It could be all sorts of different things. It could also be as simple as being with a narcissist or
yep,
somebody with borderline personality disorder, which is going to make you question your own sanity.
yep,
When you finally get out of that, you're like, whoa, that was the Twilight Zone. What
yeah,
happened? Why did I allow this to happen? Is it me? And you start to do this research and then you realize, wow, those people do exist. So just for people that are listening, it could be something as traumatic as a sexual assault as an adult or a child, or physical assault or any of those types of things, armed robbery, home invasion. Those things are all I would put at the 10.
yep.
It could also be something. I'll tell you something. I mean, I believe Brene Brown was great talking about how vulnerability is the ultimate strength. So I'm
It
going
is.
to say something which was holding me back. And 3 years with my therapist, I love this guy. He's great. And I don't go to just anybody. He is faith-based. And that's why I go to him, because we have this. I'm not being judged because we have the same philosophy, right? You go to some of these people, they just want to
Oh, yeah.
analyze. And I told him something one time. I said, because I was really thinking about it. I was reading about NLP. I was reading about releasing mental and emotional release and all these other things. And I was trying to find something. I didn't have a bad upbringing. I had my parents were alcoholics, right? I was the youngest of 4 kids. I was the youngest of all their friends' kids too. So I had this weird phenomenon where it was almost like I was the only child, right?
Right.
Because
Yeah.
everybody else was older and I was always stuck with them playing in a sand pit looking for the buried lobster carcass. True story. But one time my mother said to me, I must have been 9, 10, or 11, little league age. And my mother said to me, can you ask Mr. So-and-so for a ride home? I won't be able to get you. I said, sure. Now, this is back in like 1982. There weren't even payphones at the baseball field. I grew up in a rural area. When it got dark, it was dark. There were
Yeah.
no streetlights. It was dark. And I had the last game or last practice, and I failed to ask Mr. Dufour for a ride home. I don't remember why. Maybe I forgot to. Maybe he wasn't there. Maybe Mrs. Dufour was there. And I didn't even remember or put two and two together. And I ended up walking home because I didn't have a ride. I waited. All the lights went off, and I walked. What seemed to be 152 miles really was probably 100 feet. I was in tears, and I went over to a house. I knocked on the door in tears, called home 635-7041. I still remember the number. And I
Wow.
don't remember who answered the phone. I don't remember who came and got me. Maybe my sister. And that stupid event has wreaked havoc on my life. And it wasn't until I really identified that simple event that I was entrusted to do something and I failed. So that simple neurolinguistic attachment was holding me back in many ways. And it wasn't until I identified it that I could release it. And I laugh about it now. I'm saying, I can't believe such an insignificant event. So it doesn't even need to be something big. It
Hmm.
can actually be something so similar and stupid in the grand scheme of things.
In the grand scheme of things, but at that moment, it wasn't.
Mm.
But that's the thing, when you experience something so traumatic, your your subconscious mind has a way to switch it off so you'd survive, right? I mean, it now that it hides it, it kind of buries it away and it doesn't pop up until something similar to it in your adult life will bring up that same feeling, that same fear that you've experienced then that you didn't finish the process, and you end up experiencing that same anxiety when you're an adult.
Yeah.
Um, Waking the Tiger, I can't remember the author. That is a book. That is such a good book to really dive into. I'm going to read it again. And it talks about what trauma really is. This guy has done PTSD research since the 60s. I have never heard of him. This was the first time when somebody actually handed me the book and said, "Read this. A lot of the things that you went through kind of makes sense and it fits here." So a trauma is just, when a dog sees a squirrel, it gets excited, wants to go out and chase it, right? Then you say, no, don't go, don't do it. So the dog sits there and it starts shaking really, really bad.
Yeah.
Starts shaking because it's got all that adrenaline and it's all excited and wants to go chase a squirrel and it's gotta let this energy out. But then we tell the dog, no, it's okay. You're trying to calm the dog down. What's that do? What that doing is it's not letting that natural process of letting that fear, that adrenaline, all the hormones that was going on at that time, go through and let it out of your system. So when we go through a trauma and we go in that fight or flight mode, we start thinking, oh my God, this is not good. I cannot feel this way. I can't be afraid. I can't be anxious. That's just not part of life. And we're not allowed to feel like that. How many times have you been told you're not allowed to feel that way?
A lot. Boys aren't supposed to cry, man up, do all these other things. I'll tell you what, I don't know. We had a strawberry moon or something like that last week or the other day. And I saw a friend of mine who's all into that. And I said, man, I can't. She's into like hydrocolonics and all this other crazy internal medicine kind of thing, holistic stuff, which it's all great stuff. Don't get me wrong. But I told her, I said, oh my God, I've been crying and blah, 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 blah lately. I mean, we've had a lot of stuff, a lot of negative energy going on in the universe. And she goes, oh, that's because of the strawberry moon and your parasites inside of you are acting up and they're dying off because of the moon and you're emotional. And, told her about some other issues, which we don't need to talk about on here, includes the restroom. And she's like, oh, that's because your body's purging the parasites inside of you. I'm like, you sure it's that I didn't eat too much like MCT oil or something like that? And she's like, no, those are the parasites. Her answer is always the parasites. But it's okay to cry. And I'll tell you what, when I do stop and I do allow the emotion to come into my system, I'm conscious of it.
Yeah.
That's such an important part. I know why I am crying. I am consciously letting that emotion come in and flow through me. And I think a lot of people, and it goes back to something that I was reading recently about neurolinguistic programming and mental and emotional release that talks about our experiences are all labeled. And oftentimes they can be mislabeled. Yeah. Just like what was labeled as a youth compared to the significance of it as an adult, that everything else, since that set the precedent of the label, went under that. So here I am years ago, starting a company, and it was like, self-doubt. Oh, I'm going to screw, I didn't know I was saying these things to myself. I've done a lot of work on myself, hanging out with my shadow. I don't try to hide him. I don't try to suppress him. He's right next to me at all times. And if you piss me off, I'll let him have at you. Right. And so but these labels, these things when we were younger and we misidentify them in our older lives, they can be self-doubt and everything else like that. But letting the emotion come through, it's okay to cry. Big boys don't cry. Hey, listen, we all have emotions and they're okay to exist. Who said boys can't cry?
Where did that start is what I want to know. I mean, I remember my dad telling my brothers, It's not okay to cry. Boys should not cry. My grandfather did the same thing. He says boys are not allowed to cry.
Know what
But
I say? Why are you crying? Know why. And it doesn't even just have to be crying. Well, know why you're angry,
mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah,
Because oftentimes we're masking our own misery and projecting it upon other people, accepting that. But what we're really doing is seeing our own deficiencies in that person. We're getting angry at them, but we're the ones to blame. So you always got to ask yourself that question. Why?
yeah,
Honestly, back in my real estate training stuff, I have the UPAD principles, right? Understand, plan, action, and discipline. The first step in everything is to understand. So understand why. It's allowed. There are no bad feelings.
nope.
They're all allowed to exist. There cannot be positive without negative.
Mm-hmm.
And you're in control of that. But where along the line do people tell you, or how are we indoctrinated or inculcated that we have to think this one particular way or that particular ideology or whatnot? It's not until we start questioning, understanding it, and coming up with our own opinion that we
Yeah.
can start to unmask those things that make us miserable.
And someone like me that's super extroverted, I walk into a room, people can hear me usually because I'm super loud. But
All 5 foot of you.
oh, 5 foot of me, yes. I mean, that pause really put me in a different state of mind. It really puts I had to sit in that uncomfortable position of not having people around to constantly distract me from my own thoughts.
Yeah.
And that's when I finally realized, I'm like, geez, I have a lot of stuff I need to work through. I really do. And all that noise from people, from friends, family, or whatnot, those are not things I should not, those are their own beliefs. But I was allowing them in, and I was using that as an excuse of why I was feeling the way I was feeling. It took jumping of an airplane and then a pandemic to get to that stage of or level of my conscious awareness.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the thing, that the key word, and I always say this, you've got to be aware of what's going through you, because that's how you're going to know how to deal with it.
Once you become aware, you reach a very dangerous for everybody else, very peaceful for yourself, unique level of unfuckwithable.
Yes, it is
And
very, very, very different.
I made a post yesterday, and it said something along the lines of, when you're aware, you actually know the people. You can see and feel and read their energy.
Oh my God.
And within that energy is them bullshitting or their procrastination or their lies. Your instinct is telling you, your second brain that's down here in your gut is telling you something's not right here, but you're able to see that and read that. And that's a dangerous place because you're quiet. The mind is quiet. You're just absorbing, you're seeing, you're feeling all of this energy, and you can tell somebody's full of shit or not. You can tell if somebody's authentic or not, just by their mannerisms, just by their tonality, just by how fast or slow they're going, their tempo. And when you see somebody that promises and promises and promises and never deliver, and they're promising you, and you can just look at them and be like, I don't believe you. You're able to systematically cut these people out of your life because that negative energy will drain you. I used to tell my psychiatrist, psychologist, counselor, I don't even know what he is. He's cool though. And I used to tell him, I said, listen, I got a Tupperware. That's what I look at it. I got a Tupperware. And that Tupperware holds 5 gallons of 5 gallons of emotion or energy. And if I allow 20% negative into my Tupperware, then I'm robbing myself out of 40% positive. It's a different way to look at it because that 20% is taking up 20% space. So some would say, oh, but you got to replace it with 20%. No, I'm robbing myself because I got 20% negative in there which is a cancer. And then I got 20% that I'm missing. So that's 40% in my mind. That's how powerful negativity is if you allow it to infest you. You can't. You got to cut it out. And some people will tell me, you're an asshole. And I thank them. And I said, but I think you have it backwards. I have a very strong boundary and I don't let people cross it. I let you know right up front, we're not going there. And I prefer when people are forward, people should come with a summary, bullet point, aware, talks crap, blah, 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 blah. That way we can just get right to the point, right? Because I can tell when I'm talking to somebody if their mind is open or closed, whether I want to do business with them or not, right away.
You see it in their eyes.
You can see it in their eyes.
See it in their eyes. And that's the thing, when you're really in touch of who you are as a person, it's instead of being drained by all these negative people around you. And I experienced this with all this things that's going on around us right now. And even just reading stuff on, Facebook that people post on either side of the coin, it's exhausting. Just that, because I'm so aware of where of my thoughts and my feelings, and can empathize of what people are going through, the confusion, that they're going through, and how they're projecting themselves because they really don't know any other way. And you want to reach out to them so badly and, help them out and say, look, I get that you're hurting. I understand because I feel you, but I can't help you get rid of it, because you have to realize it yourself, why you're hurting, where it's hurting, and what caused that hurt. Like, you've got to dig deep. I can't do that.
Listen, you got to take step one right from Alcoholics Anonymous, right? You got to accept or acknowledge that there's an issue. I read a great book my counselor gave me. It's somewhere around here. This one.
Oh, yeah, yes, the Art and Power of Acceptance, yes.
The Art and Power of Acceptance. And the first thing is to, acknowledge that whatever it is, right? Yeah. You got to acknowledge it. If you're not willing to acknowledge it, then it will just consume you. It will hold you back. And honestly, Mary, we try to eat healthy. Why? To keep our health in check or to improve upon our health. We quit smoking. Why? To improve upon our health. But about mental health, how many people are really actually going out there to improve upon their mental health, their mental condition? And you cannot possibly help other people to a full capacity. Just like love, you can't love somebody till you love yourself. Yep. Well, you can only love them to the capacity to what you love yourself. You got to have a healthy mind, a clear mind. If you're going to be a leader of anything and you're not reading about Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, you're not reading about different Carl Jung and the shadow theory, if you're not reading Jim Quick's new book, Limitless, if you're not reading all these different things to understand why you ticked the way you ticked, that other people might tick the way, you're no good to help them, right? You're no good to help them. And I'm not putting myself up on a pedestal. I got Mount Everest to climb, okay? But I'm at base camp. And that's a lot further than I was 4 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
When I was just rolling around Dubai looking for the strip club, party time. So let's talk about that. What we're going to do, everybody, is we're going to meet you in part 2. So we're going to end this one right now, and we're going to come back, and what we're going to be talking about is materialism, money, and misery. So that's why I want a whole fresh episode of that. So we'll see you on the flip side.